All right, we're going to get started because I like being on time, and we're already late. Amen. My name is Sarita Smith. I am the Executive Director of Student Assignments, and that's just really a fancy title for I connect with our planning and operations team and try to get real feedback from families and community members and try to align those values as we kind of look at criteria on buildings, boundaries, and programs. And so you lovely people have decided to be crazy with me and spend some Wednesday nights on trying to figure out how to reimagine this wonderful place called DeKalb. A few reasons, and I spoke about this in the first meeting, but if you weren't here, we have way too many seats than we do have students. That's a problem, both financially and operationally. And the pockets of where people are and where they want to be are interesting and coincide. We have lots of programs that we haven't processed, vetted, or even thought really about in a long time, or how to bring on new programs. We don't really have a process for that, which is a little interesting. So we're going to be looking at all these things together. And then the goal is to bring some kind of recommendation to the board, probably not this coming March, but next March. So that's why the process is so long. And we won't see each other in the summer because I plan to hopefully go on vacation at some point. So our agenda today, I will not go over the norms and purpose every time, but they are on your table just to kind of reiterate kind of our process while we're here. We're going to talk a little bit about some exit ticket data. So the first meeting that we had in the big in AIC, there was an exit ticket. You guys gave me some feedback. We're going to review some of that data today. Going forward, we'll probably email them to you guys like, hey, here's some things and here's what I found out. My goal is to try to get answers for that stuff. I am a facilitator of information. I do not know much about DeKalb at all. So I work with all the teams in the district to try to bring that information and centralize it for you guys. We'll review some data and what the process will be like. We will try to understand what our big question is. You guys are going to do a lot of work in groups. So if for whatever reason your teammates, so you see a lot of name tags, if they don't show up, we'll kind of reorganize you guys so you guys have enough of a conversation space. We'll complete a data worksheet. So for those of you that bought a laptop, we appreciate you because that means we don't have to retype things or try to read people's handwriting. And Kayla, wave your hand. It's my EA. She will come around and give you our password so you can get online and use those data worksheets. We'll do some sharing out, and we're probably not going to get to the Trigo Ed part because we are so far away from that decision-making process. That's going to be down the line. And then we will inform you of what's next, and you'll do another exit ticket, which you will do each time. And that just helps me get better in facilitating for your group. So if there's something you like, Sarita, please don't do that again. I heard you. Yes, ma'am. We'll move on and not do that again. All right, and every time there will also be in the packet kind of a working agenda. This just helps me stay on time. It helps Kayla make me stay on time so we can make sure we are honoring all of your time. And you found your worksheets. So today for this meeting norm, we obviously want you to center all the meeting norms. You have table tents with them as well, just for reminders. We really want you thinking about collective impact, right? And I did say this at the first meeting too. This is not about you and yours and your block, your neighborhood, right? It really is collectively looking at DeKalb. I will preface that with there are some things that are already in the works that we just have to do from an operation standpoint, from a building standpoint, and those were already going, right? And so what we didn't want to do is like pump the brakes on that because, SAP is here. We're going to be kind of doing some things simultaneously, and I will make sure that information gets brought into the loop for our process as well. But collective impact, thinking about kind of that big picture, right? And for today, I would love for you to try to comprehend as much of your team's data as possible. So you'll see and I'll go back to that document, but it kind of breaks up like which teams are going to look at what set of data. I do not expect you to leave here understanding the data tonight. I do not expect you to know everything about whatever your data set is, but what this does help me understand is a little bit of your working group and your learning style. And so today is, if you think of it as like a trial run on kind of the process, right? I've already gotten enough feedback on how to tweak it from the other two committees. I'm sure you guys will bring me some too. And then we'll roll that again into that feedback, and that will shift how we do your next meeting. All right, so a little bit about that exit ticket. I'm standing like directly in front of this. Let's do that. A little bit about the exit ticket information. So there was a lot of appreciation just for like what I kind of heard was like real talk, I guess, and real feedback from people that have been in DeKalb, been through the system, been through the programs. A lot of appreciation for that from both committee members and staff and the content. So we appreciate that feedback. There was some specifications around the history and understanding how that was helpful and how we'll use that during our subcommittees. So I post everything we do on our website. So the feedback, the documents that you have, anything we email you guys, those are going to be on that website. So you will always have a reference to come back to as we move through the process, because a lot of this stuff you'll be using again throughout the process. So we also have, I also go to school visits. So I'm trying to visit as many schools as possible so I can get you guys some real anecdotal information from the people that are living and breathing this every day. Just went to NRBJ Harris like yesterday. Hello, principal. And so just hearing from the people that are running the day-to-day operations, I think is helpful, right? There is data and then there's reality, and like where's the middle ground? And so we'll be bringing some of that information to you guys to say, here's what your principals and leaders of schools are also saying about buildings, boundaries, and programs, especially as we get into the reimagining phase of things. There was a few mentions about wanting takeaways. So again, this isn't like when you come today, this is what you're leaving with. We are really following a learning process here. Do we have some ideas, again, operationally of what this could look like? Sure. Do we know how we're going to get there? Not necessarily. And have we thought of all the nuances? Absolutely not, right? And so every time we go to a meeting, Mr. Hofstadter's here, operations chief, every time we go to a meeting about something, we're like, we didn't think of it that way. Let's add that to the plan, right? That's what this process really is, right? Let's think about it in different ways, especially from our stakeholders, and let's consider what that may look like in the grander scheme of things. There was some pushback on accuracy of data, particularly middle school inception. So I went back to Hofstadter's team and I was like, they said this ain't right, right? How do we do that? So middle school, for example, really started in the 60s, I think, one of them. And then we went to those weird kind of like funky K6 or 7. And then it went to 6 through 8. So there has been like middle school transitions throughout DeKalb. The information presented on that history walk was when we all kind of shifted to that 6 to 8 model, and there was identified middle schools for every cluster. But there has been some waves of that, and the iteration of that is on the website if you would love to look at that timeline. And then there was some information about some groups of students that were missing, like IEPs or our Latino populations, like when they came in, or our immigrant populations, fair and noted. We will be talking about some of those as we go through that cluster process. The goal of that was just to give you a pretty zoomed out view of like, here's where we started and here's kind of where we're at right now. But fair note, and we will make sure we specify those. But I will say for IEP students, that is a non-purpose of this committee. We are not specifically talking about IEP education. Now, buildings maybe, or where programs are perhaps, but not like how we educate IEP students. That is a non-purpose of this committee. All right. And so when we review data, DeKalb is, 90,000+ students large, right? It is not plausible that everybody's going to look at every criteria and every piece of data in this committee, right? Partially why we also broke up the committee into 4 different ones so we can kind of concentrate what we're looking at. And obviously we'll be bringing a lot of that together at some point. And so what we will be doing a lot is cluster analysis, which just means there's a huge data set. I'm preparing next month's data, and the slide deck is already 75 pages long, right? And so what we're not going to ask is every table look at 75 pages, but maybe like 15 each. And that's cluster analysis. We'll kind of break it up in a way that makes sense. And then each table will be responsible, or each team will be responsible for looking at a certain criteria. And then there's some probing questions that we'll ask you. So there'll always be a certain criteria of data. There's some documentation you could look at, and then you'll kind of ask some questions. We have some team stand-up staff in the building that we'll be inviting to each meeting, and we'll be rotating around the room as you're in your group so you guys can ask questions, and as much information as we have at hand will help provide those and guide you in that process. And then there will be a little bit of a share out. So that's kind of the flow of each of the meetings as we look at data. And so tonight there are 2 big questions. One table, team 4, has a slightly different question. Everybody else will be looking at this one, and that's really determining how we right size our district to adequately serve the current and projected population. And I stress projected because you could bill for what's today, but if that doesn't matter 20 years from now, then we're missing the mark, right? And so there's a lot of data about actuals, which is, this is what already happened. There's a lot of data about projected. This is what we believe is gonna happen. And Mr. Hofstadter's team has a whole vetting process around projections. They have been in like one point accuracy, what percent of accuracy have we been in projections?
Within 1%.
Within 1% of accuracy, so that's pretty good for a.
That's better than the weather folks.
Yeah, because this weather in Atlanta is hitting a little different. And so that's really good for us to think about. I think we also preface that projections are really only good for like 2 or 3 years, and then, you know, I'm not really sure what's going to happen in the world. So we want to be thinking about that. And that's why you look at actuals too, like what has been happening and then what's projected to happen. And then there's another question, I forgot wherever team 4 is, and that's really about our athletic complexes and fields. Like how can we support families to like adequately participate in their kids' co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Like we were just at Druid Hills, and I don't know how they do athletics over there. Like it's really challenging, and for parents to participate. Or we go to some schools that have bleachers and benches, and some have none or lights. Like that's inequitable, right? And so looking at that, and part of that reason is because we are doing a huge audit on all of the athletic spaces and the wonderful stadiums we have. You know, I know we have 5 stadiums in DeKalb that were built in like 1908, I think. Like they are very historic looking stadiums. And really trying to figure out how we manage those resources and what's valuable to us in that process. Because we can overhaul and spend millions of dollars on stadiums, or maybe we do it at schools where people can support their kids, right? Maybe the centralized piece makes sense. So thinking through all of that. So those are kind of the big questions, and big questions really should just guide the conversation, right? I'm not expecting you to leave here and answer the question, just help to guide the conversation. Okay, so I told you at these meetings I'm gonna do very little talking, y'all gonna do most of it. So here's how we're gonna transition in this. You guys each have a group, and you'll see here, each of your groups is responsible for a different data set to look at, and then whoever has the computers at your groups, I think we got everybody logged in with Wi-Fi, we made this wonderful Google Doc for you guys to use on the worksheet, right? And so for the bulk of this time, you guys will be looking at those guiding questions, adding your own questions, particularly around your data set. Each of the data sets are divided by that big orange, a document with a big orange circle. So you'll see a big orange circle in your packet, and then the next orange circle is another data set. So that's how you know where your data set is, and we'll come around. And so your goal for this is to review the data and then to start, again, just kind of processing some of those questions around your specific data set, and then we'll come back, and then our team is gonna be kind of circling around like vultures to answer all your questions and poke you guys a little bit on pushing your thought process around each of your data sets. Yeah? All right, I'm done talking, and we're gonna get to work. Very, very good conversation. We also strategically tried to mix these groups up so you have just different people. We got educators, we got parents, we got PAC members. Like we tried to, be really intentional about mixing up the group so you can hear, different voices, which is super helpful in these kind of conversations. I want to point you to a few things before we share out. This deck has a lot of information in it. There's a whole section called considerations. That wasn't anyone's data point, but we did kind of map out just some information. There's a lot of schools that have too many seats and a lot of schools that have not enough seats. Something to consider and look at. Again, this data will be something we continue to keep with us. It is on the website, but that is definitely something we want to think about. And not necessarily to say which school should we consolidate and which school should we, build something, but what's happening at those schools. Planning has this amazing document. It's just like my favorite one, where it shows your serving school and then where kids are going from that school. It's dope. And I'll show you the link to that. And that information is really critical. Because if 150 kids are leaving Cedar Grove to go to Arabia, what is happening at Arabia that we cannot duplicate or replicate somewhere else, right? And so those kind of questions, or why is only one school only serving X school and those are the only kids getting in? What's happening there? Now I'll tell you moving forward, you probably won't see that because, my team we're a little more strict. I don't know what's happening before us, but it's really helpful. There was also something called a capital improvement project, the Capital Master, what is it called? CMP. Capital Master Program Plan, something or another. I don't remember the name. I'm getting sleepy. Comprehensive Master Facility Plan. There, it came back to me. Yes. So this is like a 300-page document. What was supposed to happen was they were supposed to look at every school, give suggestions on boundary changes, building changes, similar to like the process we're doing. That community piece was questionable, I think. There is some skepticism about the process in general, who got hired, et cetera. So I say that to say that not all is lost in that plan. Our planning department, actually, a lot of the buildings, a lot of the renovations, Dresden, Sequoia that's coming online, Cross Keys, all came out of that plan, right? So not all is lost. And for our facilities people, what they did was go to each facility and kind of rate it. So when they were looking at the facilities, that is also something about outdoor space that our planning team is still looking at and has some other people coming in to look at that data. So those are there. And then if you don't know what eSPLOST is, basically there's a 1% tax that in addition to your property tax that goes to capital improvements for schools. And we get that money, and I think last year was like $7 million or something, last eSPLOST, right? And so SAP, we're trying to align this process with our funding, right? Because it's nice to have all this talk, but if you don't have the money to do it, like what are we talking about, right? And so we're trying to align these two together. So as we bring eSPLOST to the board, we can also say, and here's what our SAP process revealed around buildings, boundaries, and programs, and how we should allocate some of that money. So there's some information about eSPLOST there for you guys. And then some related data. So I just told you about that document that I love so much are these three right here. They break it up by high school, middle school, and elementary. And again, you'll see the feeder school, and then you'll see like the theme schools and the magnets and everywhere these kids are going. Again, interesting numbers. You should definitely take a look at it. It's my fave. Planning also has information about how many students live in an area versus how many actually attend the school in that area. So there's some just comparable information around that. So I gave you guys a bunch of stuff, and then a lot of the data that you see in this packet are from one of these links. So our planning team has some really good links, and it's gonna make you say, why? Why is that like that? Or, wow, I never knew that this many kids go here, right? And so that's some data for you guys to look at, which is why there's all clickable links. All right, we're going to do a little sharing out. And then I'll tell you what's next, and we're going to get you out of here. What team wants to share out? Just not everything you wrote down. We have your documents, but just things that came up that kind of made you go, oh, I didn't even consider that was a thing here in DeKalb. Highlights. What we got?
Okay, so
Yes. And this was our lone team that talked about the athletics and sports fields and yeah.
Okay, so we had athletics, and the question was, how can we ensure that families can enjoy supporting their student extracurricular or co-curricular activities at their local high school? Well, I found it interesting that we were all females, but that's okay, we love this. That there are only a total of 5 stadiums in the district, and basically, some are as old as 1961, and the most current one is, current two, is 1968. The things that we discussed and we got some information on is the games, how they are located, what games, what stadiums you go to. Is based on who you're playing, the size of the school. Just, I personally didn't know that. I thought it was this area, they go to this particular stadium. We thought about the schools that may not have Title I schools, funding, transportation there, students being able to afford to get in the game. We also talked about, okay, well, if DeKalb has the land, can we build instead of keep putting back into stadiums that are older and trying to renovate and money, just throwing money away. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that. We want parents to be able to get to the games when it comes to traffic and in Georgia, and for it not to be so far away. We wanted
Yes.
to make it convenient to the parents and the students that may not have the transportation to get there. So do we group up certain schools to be at certain stadiums? Or
Okay.
how are we doing this? When it comes down to it, I'm just going to summarize.
Yes.
Funding, sponsorships, using the fields that we have, the fields that were just built, or I don't know the word I want to use. The practice fields.
Okay, yep.
Towers has a new one. We have at Columbia, but there's nowhere for the families to
park.
sit. So we were talking about putting bleachers,
Yeah.
a concession stand, and you have to have restrooms, different things like that. And I know something new with the elementary and middle schools. They're starting to have sports too,
Yeah.
and they need to be able to get to their schools,
Yeah.
the high school. So I didn't know it was this deep, to be honest with you.
Welcome to my life. Yeah.
So-
And I think that was I just want to comment on that point you said, like, is there a way of kind of keeping areas together? Something, and you mentioned elementary, and so my daughter ran track for this year for elementary, and they did it by area. And then the top times from the area all came together for a district, right? Is there opportunity to rethink how to use stadiums effectively? So to your point, you're not sitting in Atlanta traffic for 2 hours to get to and from.
And just the last
Yes.
thing. I'm not from Georgia, but I've been here for a couple of years. I've never been to a stadium where it's just one-sided.
Yeah. There's usually a home and a away. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah, that was
benefits
different.
to having your own side.
That's fair. Thank you. All right, team 4. Yay. Thank you.
I did, yeah, if I could, just one, do I have to push something? Or no? Just one last thing is just to say that when you have a home stadium, when you have a home field, you create that sense of place. And you lose that when you're having to go elsewhere.
Community in place with that. Yeah.
And so if the intent
Yeah.
is to engage, create a space where people feel like this is truly my home space.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. All right, who's next? Great job. Great job.
Maybe you could just bring the mic to you, as close to your mic as possible.
Oh Lord, you got me to my mic.
There.
Great.
All right. Team 3.
Team three. Team three. First of all, I would like to say that we were really diverse over here, right? My son graduated from Southwest DeKalb in 2011. She has a baby coming up, and he has babies coming up. So I don't know about y'all.
She works with us.
Okay, we was all in the conversation together. So we got different perspectives
Absolutely.
because of that, right? I hound on the fact that I'm traditional and I'm down with keeping what we got.
What data set did you guys look at?
Huh?
What data set were you guys looking at?
We Southwest.
What
South-
projections, enrollment? What do we,
Forecasted.
forecast data. Okay.
Forecast data.
Okay.
Sorry. And that was sad to all of us because it was going down. And when we see that it is going down, we know something got to happen. So with that, we talked about the word close. I never want to use that, but we talked about consolidation and how that should work. We talked about one, consolidating from from the middle schools, taking some of the sixth grade to the elementary and the 7th and 8th to the high school, and utilizing the middle schools for some other source, right?
Okay.
The other thing we talked about was from a program perspective. If a lot of our people, and we don't know this data, right, which we talked about, we don't know if our kids are going to other schools, right, for whatever reason, right? If they're going for programs, let's bring those programs here. But the great idea was centralizing it so nobody gets it in their area where someone is having to go from south to north.
Yes.
Right now, nobody's going north to south for any programs. So that's something for us to think about when we're really talking about consolidation, right? What do we really look at as it relates to all of DeKalb? And it was mentioned, we talked about culture of DeKalb County in general being north and south. But at the same time, if we look at consolidation, what is really equitable? And we talked about access, we talked about transportation, and the fact that programs came up a lot. But I still kind of think about, from a programmatic perspective, if programs are being offered up there, they should be offered down here, period. And we need to figure out what that looks like equitably.
Absolutely.
But we really was trying to stay away from the word close, and we with consolidation as it relates to population. And we did have a question, I think we put it in here, what is really right sizing?
Yeah.
So I just want to leave it there.
That's great. Thank you, guys.
Did I
All right,
get
team 3. And I'll push that consolidation further to reimagining, because if programs is going to be the next meeting, that slide deck is already like 75 pages long, so get ready. We got a lot of programs. Like I'm putting a slide deck together, and I'm like, we do what and when, right? And so there is a lot to consider when we start talking about programs. So good job at merging the ideas. Yes. You ready? Come on now, you raised your hand. You ready?
All right. Hi, good evening. So we had program schools defining, and what we saw, there were 12 different specialized programs. So this is really based on the child's needs, and that's what we were able to see with the various different programs. I was a little partial because I do have a child at Coral Woods, and I understand that type of model. And we realized between Coral Woods and the Early Learning Center, those were two where the enrollment was pretty high, and we feel like those schools, either that model could be replicated and placed either in other schools, possibly even expanding Coral Woods as well, but replicating that model. But then we would also need to, look at the staffing. So we would potentially have to increase staffing. Maybe, this is what I just added, give teachers incentives for getting specialized trainings,
yeah.
because there is a special needs that you have to work with children with special needs, as well as the Early Learning Center. I hear that it's very hard to get in there, so we need to look at that. People need their kids in school at 3 years old versus waiting until, 6, 7, and 8. So we would have to, I think this school, Early Learning Center, just came like so many years ago.
Like 2? Like 2 years.
2017.
Yeah, I would say it's
So
pretty
we
recent.
noticed that there is a need for that. So we
Yeah.
need to look at the data of what happens when people do start early and how we can replicate that. And then also, with the other one we saw was the DeKalb High School Tech. There is a very large enrollment. What we wanted to know is
North and south? There are
the
two?
North and South. So what does that career path look like after they graduate?
Oh, look, our CTAE director is here.
Are they actually going into those fields? And if they are, then maybe more people need to have access to this. And if they can't have access through this program, could it be brought back into the schools as like a specials something like that. And then we wanted to know how our kids access outside of school choice, because there were some very specific ones like the Eaglewoods, GNets.
Yeah, that's a
like how
great
do they
question.
access that?
Yeah.
For those
so
kids.
you guys, and I didn't preface this with you guys, and my apologies, but these are not all, but some of our kind of high yield specialty programs that have their own building. Outside of Tech North, which technically should have its own building, but is inside of Cross Keys High School right now. Long story. We'll get to that when we talk about programs next time. But so there are other programs that are outside of that, but these are typically they have their own building and there's some type of requirement
Gotcha.
to get in
And
there.
we figured that it was very specialized, but
Yes.
we weren't sure, like,
Nope,
how are
you
they
got it.
assessed and things of that nature.
And usually they are placed by IEP or student services based on need, based on education attainment, stuff like that would probably place students in most of those programs.
Okay, and we did use the word condensed, but we'll say reimagine.
Come on, we learn
Reimagine.
fast. I love it.
So that's all we have.
And the question around some of our specialized programs is if they are super, super small, do they need their own building? It costs a lot of money to operate a building, regardless of who's in there or not, right? And so I don't know, I don't have the figure, but at my last district, it was like 10 million, just the building. If you have kids in there, then your student cost is lower, right? So we want to have, we're not saying pack them in like sardines, but we are saying like if it's 6 kids in the classroom, we got to ask some questions, right? And so some of those programs are so specialized that maybe they do need their own building. And some we're like, is there opportunity to reimagine how that space is used and or that program? But great job. Team 2? Who are you guys? I don't know what team. We were 2. 2, yay, team 2. All right. Oh, did you want to answer anything? Go ahead.
So we can, I can pull that data for you. We track post-secondary enrollment and what we call career connectivity through state because we receive federal funds from the federal government. We have to track that. For the past 3 to 4 years, DeKalb has had probably between a 35 and a 50% post-secondary or career transition rate, which is low, but we have room to reimagine our programs and grow. It really is about industry needs, right? So connecting what industry says is high skilled, high wage, high demand to what programs our schools are offering. We can't put welding in every building because it's a multi-million-dollar program. Culinary, cosmetology, barbering, those are the programs that we put at our centers, Tech North and also Tech South. And so a lot of things impact enrollment, total enrollment at Cross Keys, interest and availability for the schools that feed into Tech North and Tech South. So I will work to get that data that you requested for this.
Great. And anytime we get additional data, there's a section on our website called Related Data. It's going to be plopped there along with the middle school graph is plopped there too. So again, I'm just trying to centralize all the stuff for you guys because once we start getting into it, you're like, what happened to that? It's on the website. So we just have one place. All right. Team
right.
what? What are you guys? Two?
We're Team 1.
Team 1.
And our focus was buildings, capacity, and enrollment. And so to echo some of the sentiments that you all had, we were kind of surprised, not kind of, we were surprised to see the gap, like how different that number was, where there were several schools with more than 300 empty seats. And while we are interested in, I think the word previously was tradition and keeping things as they are, that the reality when you're looking at those numbers, we were like, we have to look at the data, and the data is that is a lot of elementary schools that have far too many open seats, even as far as like 400 or 500 empty seats. And so we were looking at, one of our questions was around, how many buildings do we actually need? And so that also led us into another discussion about, and one of these other groups mentioned it too, reimagining it as perhaps a K through 8 type of situation where we can condense some schools and adjust in that way. Which also led to a conversation about pre-K 3 and maybe perhaps turning some of those now reimagined schools into centers for the babies.
Oh. Come on, pre-K parents. They like, yes.
Because when they go to elementary school, then it's like getting paid because you're not spending all of your money on sending your child to daycare. Amen. And then we had just a general conversation also around increasing the amount of CTAE programs that are available, different pathways, and Spanish immersion programs and other things that we know that people are very interested in, and perhaps replicating those in different schools on this side.
All right, team one. Nice.
High schools for Spanish immersion, because there we go, attrition. So there's not the pathway, so like you go
Yes.
for elementary and then it doesn't.
You guys will
have
see that next week when we,
articulation. That's the word.
articulation is an interesting thing for programs in DeKalb County School District.
I did.
Last but not least.
The one thing about going last is that I can say ditto, 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 and ditto.
That part. Yes, ma'am.
Someone mentioned about looking at it from the numbers standpoint. It's a big eye opener when you look at where we are. And like I said, some of us remember back during 2010, 2008 when we went through this process with 11,000 open seats.
2011,
Back then.
yep.
Yeah, so now here we are again. So I personally who struggled, we had a long conversation, and the gentleman that was so gracious with
Hofstetter, I think he
yeah,
stepped out.
Hofstetter, yes, with helping me trying to understand some of the numbers and how it works. And one of the questions about the right sizing, the schools, it was just kind of difficult for me to look at, because one of the things I remember you said at the first meeting, that if we put down what we think, be able to support that. So I'm like, I can come here at these 15 schools and go X, Y, Z, but how would I be able to support it? So I wanted to have a little bit more information.
Absolutely.
Then when we talked about possibly consolidating, it matters where they are physically located.
So you need
To be able to look at a map, aerial map of some type that just says, okay, you're close by.
Yep.
The building age, not necessarily because the building is old, and I'm a senior citizen, proud senior citizen. Just because you're old doesn't necessarily mean,
Come on.
that it's, because a school that's 5 years old may be in worse shape than a school that's 15 and 20.
100%.
Because, and again, I'm coming from knowledge of being in the district for 28 years.
Yeah.
So when the facility, the scores, and you go through, and then you
Right.
find out if you got the splash money to pay for AC, and so some of the schools were actually kind of brought up to
Yeah.
speed and modernized.
A lot.
Like I shared with you about the Bob Mathis, which is that specialized with the
Yeah.
Corwood South, with all the equipment that they have there to service the kids. So there were certain things that I couldn't, in good conscience, just say, okay, well, Tony's got this, Snapfinger's got this, let's squish them together.
Right.
But then, then you open up another can of worms. Now, someone mentioned, and we agreed as well about maybe bringing sixth grade back. Because I remember when elementary went to seventh.
Yeah.
So maybe bring the sixth grade back, middle school, 7th, 8th, and 9th. There are some repurposing possibilities.
Yeah.
As you were talking about the pre-K programs.
Yeah.
That's a bigger thing that's going right now. Back when we were looking at it in the past, we even wanted to know if Southwest DeKalb could take Rainbow for something, for other programs that they needed, since they were close by.
Yeah.
So then that would,
Alleviate some
give
of that, yeah.
and give you another building, and then that would kind of help. So just a lot of different things, but just to look at it, we know we're back here again.
We are.
So we've got
And I think I said this across a few tables that the dip in enrollment is not a Georgia or DeKalb issue. This is a nationwide thing, right? Like, this is why I got a job, because I got to go to a different district and talk about this, right? This is a nationwide thing. And I think for a few purposes. One, people her age are not having children. It's really they fault. It's their fault. Like, the younger generations, like, meeting my college sweetheart, falling in love, getting the house and the kid. That's not what they want. That's not their goal. They're just not. They like, I'm traveling. I'm like spending my money on stuff on me.
Right.
Yes, they are not here for that. The number of average children per household drastically shifted in the last 20 years, right? People that are aging in place are not turning those houses over to younger families with kids, right? And so you're seeing a lot of that happening all at once, and people are living longer, right? It's happening all at once, which does bring us to your point. 2011, there was a big redistricting, and here we are again having similar conversations. But we want to be a little more thoughtful about how to do it, and to make sure that we don't create deserts and communities intentionally. Like, let's repurpose, rethink, reprogram. Where can we get the pre-K 3 in? Like, right, if we're gonna do it, like, let's do it well. And don't leave people with a stain on that we're taking something away from their community. How do we repurpose your community to make it better and to make sure your kids have some sound education and possibly some programs that we haven't done before?
It's like Tilson Elementary, I think at one time it was closed, and then of course it stayed abandoned, and then that was some issues, you know, because the kids people breaking in, you know, squatters, that kind of thing. And I can't remember what superintendent, if it was Dr. Green or whatever they think, and I don't know if it still exists. They made it like a pre-K.
Oh, that's what the Early Learning Center is now.
Yeah, but see, it was closed at one point for quite a while, so that's the other thing. If we're talking about closing buildings, then what's the county's responsibility to that community?
Yes.
Because now you're talking about
So it's just
devastating
sitting at-
property
Yep.
taxes and having other issues going on, so it's,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So, you got that, Ms. April?
All right, great job. You guys did a wonderful job on this exercise. So again, this was really to get me a feel, taste and flow. We are also, Kayla's working really hard to get all of this data that we have in Excel format in your Google Docs, so you guys can play around and filter and do all those things for you Excel nerds like me who love to create documents and play with them. And we'll get as much, again, of that data on that site as possible. All right, so what is next? So we are going to dive a little further into some stuff next time. We'll be kind of looking at program stuff. Again, the slide deck's pretty long, so get ready. We got a lot of programs in DeKalb. And the next few meetings are really going to be just education, right? Education, processing. That's what this is. Again, not expecting you to come out with any answers. Like, that is much further down the line. There's a lot to learn in DeKalb, so we're going to be spending a lot of time learning and then capturing. And the reason I have you do the worksheets, because if your brain is anything like mine, once I leave here, I'm not going to remember nothing we talked about. So keep it on the Google Docs so we can always refer back to it, because a lot of these things, as this table mentioned, got into the program conversation. A lot of it intertwines, right? And so we want to start documenting so we can be strategic about that. Again, there's a lot of links on here. Please try to go to that planning website. There is a lot of data on there to look at. And then our next, not central, but west committee is 11/20. So we'll see you one more time in November. We won't talk in December, and then we'll come back after in January, okay? Thank you, guys. You did a great job. Great job, great job. Oh, do the exit ticket. Sorry. Please. Please give us feedback. I'll make sure we can do your programming, your time with us better. Yeah, we'll bring it back. Scan the QR code, do the exit ticket before you leave.